Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rowing with the Homies. This is a show where I'm trying to establish healthy exercise routines into my life while talking about current events, big ideas, mental health, and hopefully you'll find some value in these conversations. And sorry for the lapse in episodes over the last week or so. The old rower broke, and unfortunately it enabled a little bit of a backslide in the establishment of this routine. Also, people here in the house got sick. I had a little minor injury, funny enough, as I was trying to move the rowing machine on my own, and those things didn't help either. But I braved the sketchy world that is Facebook Marketplace, was able to locate a nice used rower, and here I am back at it. I really appreciate you giving me the gift of your time, and I hope that you're making progress in your own fitness and mental health journey. And sleep has been on my mind lately. Sleep and I have had an on and off again relationship for quite a while. Anxiety and stress that come along with being an adult, well, just being alive in general. Those things don't make experiencing consistent and healthy sleep any easier. And as I say it, I realize that sounds very similar to my relationship with fitness. We often, or I often at least, focus on the workout. But a huge part of developing a healthy exercise routine is also making sure to find ways to maintain good sleep patterns and good sleep hygiene. So today I wanted to really dive into the relationship between sleep and our overall well-being. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm a big news reader, and I came across some interesting research that was released recently that really kind of helped me to think about, or it helped in the way that I think about the relationship between sleep and our sleep patterns and the relationship to our overall feeling of wellness and well-being. And the findings suggest that just as important, or even more important than how many hours of sleep we get, is how well our sleep lines up with our internal clock, our circadian rhythm. And so this is coming from research done at the University of Michigan. They published a study very recently, December of 2024, that, again, I just found really interesting. They were collecting data by using wearables like smartwatches, fitness trackers, a lot of things that many of us already have, in conjunction with mood surveys, to examine the real-world connection between sleep, our sleep patterns, and how we feel. And the main conclusion was that it's not just about getting the magic range of 7 to 9 hours of sleep every day, but also the timing of the sleep and whether or not it's in sync with our natural 24-hour cycle seems to significantly impact mood. And so they found a clear link between what they call circadian misalignment, which is when our sleep-wake schedule doesn't match our body's internal clock. And a key response from participants in the study said that when people were operating in circadian misalignment, they reported significantly increased feelings of depression. And of course, being somebody who deals with symptoms of depression pretty regularly, as many of us do, that really resonated with me. And so it seems that even when we have enough hours of sleep, if those hours aren't happening at the right time for our body's rhythm, we might still experience poorer overall sleep quality. And to make it even more important and more significant and more consequential even, as we're talking about exercise and health, the misalignment with the circadian rhythm also connects to changes in appetite regulation. So if you find yourself feeling unrested, or if you're misaligned with your circadian rhythm, then cravings can be different, and your body might just get confused with the types of foods that it thinks it needs. But again, most significant, I think, is the link to increased feelings of sadness, hopelessness, negative thoughts, which were proportional to the degree of misalignment with the circadian clock. And so the researchers really emphasized the role of our brain's natural timekeeping, our internal clock, our circadian rhythm, which is governed by a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. This clock is light sensitive, especially natural daylight, and when our sleep isn't aligned to this natural light-dark cycle, this seems to be the biggest instigator of misalignment. That's where problems can start to begin. I noticed this definitely, as for as long as I can remember, I've struggled to have consistent quality sleep, but also problems maintaining a regular sleep schedule. An observation that the study made was even when people like myself, we will try to have an extended period of sleep or rest on a weekend, for example, and we get a few extra hours, that actually can make it worse. It could actually make the misalignment worse. And so that sense of feeling off, that things just aren't right, even after a really long period of sleep, there's evidence to support why. And then energy is inconsistent, irritability, crankiness are common, and it's just something that gets worse and worse over time. And so, I mean, it makes sense when you think about biology. We are very visually oriented beings. We've evolved with sunlight. And so sleeping at times when we should be awake, so having a long sleep period into the morning or early afternoon, but then being awake when we should be sleeping late at night, it makes sense that there might be some friction, some internal friction, and our bodies just get confused. And so that really gets me thinking about the relationship between our modern lifestyle and our sleep habits. because it seems like timing is really important to how we interact with our own bodies and how our bodies communicate physiological needs. Because let's face it, most of our lives are structured around work schedules or other sorts of productivity measures, whether that be a regular 9-to-5 job or some other kind of work that we do. Our wake-up times are often dictated by alarms and not necessarily by when our bodies want to rise. And our evenings can often be filled with work past business hours or household tasks or other things that just push our sleep times to be later and later. And again, like I get it, because work is important. We have to have a means of surviving under capitalism. We have to be good little productive members of society. So the work is not going to go anywhere. But at least to me, and I think to many of us, co-equal is the need to be active in our family and active socially, to have lives that bring joy and engagement and fulfillment. And so if so much of our day is dominated by work and by productivity, then it's the time when we're not working, after work, that we try to fill with those things that refresh us and revitalize us. And they push our days to be longer and longer. But I do really want to emphasize this concept of productivity, this focus on productivity, on doing and making. It is so baked into the lives that we live that we maximize every minute. And so sleep is often one of the first things that gets sacrificed in that idea, in that process of getting more done. So we tend to focus on pushing through over prioritizing rest. And it's hard because a significant portion of people are even worse in this situation because of their shift work. Healthcare workers, manufacturing jobs, any of these sorts of things that have a very strict period of work where the schedule inherently conflicts with their natural cycles. And it becomes an ongoing struggle against the internal clock, and it has real, potentially dire consequences for health and well-being. And of course, we can't ignore all of our devices, phones, tablets, computers. They're constant companions in our lives, especially at night when we are winding down or relaxing or just trying to let our brains rest in the easiest way possible. And we know that the light that they emit interferes with our biology, specifically melatonin, which is a biochemical our bodies produce that signals to our brains that it's time to sleep. And if we're looking at these blue light emitting devices, those messages sometimes don't get sent. So a consequence of all of this is that bedtimes, those things that we rebelled so heavily against as children, How many of us think now, oh man, I wish for that nap time now. I wish I had a bedtime. But the reality is, of course, that bedtimes just get later and later as we take on more and more responsibilities. And I don't think it's uncommon for many, maybe even most people, to stay up past 10, 11, midnight. I mean, when I hear about going to sleep at 10 o'clock, I do kind of laugh because I can't remember the last time I was able to actually set a bedtime at 10 for going to sleep. Our kids rarely make it in bed by that time. So a term has been coined to relate to this, and it's called social jet lag. And it's the difference between our weekday and weekend sleep schedules as we try to catch up on sleep during our days off. As we try to cram in as much rest as possible on the days when we should be enjoying ourselves, honestly. Like, not that sleep isn't enjoyable, of course, but those are the days when we should be utilizing our free time to connect and relax and to enjoy the things that refuel us and fulfill us. But our sleep cycles are constantly being upended and unsettled. And then, of course, there's this daylight saving stuff that happens every 6 months. When in the spring, we lose an hour of morning light. And in the fall, we do the opposite. And there was once a reason for it, I guess, but man, I know personally, every time it happens, I get miserable and I just feel terrible because nothing feels right. You wake up one morning and it's dark when you rise, and it makes your day feel so much more open to possibility. And then the next day you wake up and it's sunlight and you feel as if you've lost so much time. And that's not even the biological connection between the light. That's just the psychological effect of feeling manipulated by something so inconsequential, something so meaningless. But all of these things are just constantly interfering with what should be coming naturally to us, with what our bodies are telling us that we need. And I do wonder how prevalent this is. I know anecdotally from the people that I connect with that it's a common enough problem. And I wonder how many of our newly emerging, prevalent, ongoing health concerns might have relationships to our sleep schedules and the stress and the anxiety that comes along with the work that we're not able to naturally process and metabolize as we should with healthy sleep. Let me know. I'm curious if this is something that you feel. And that brings me to my closing segment. And today, depression feels like sleepwalking. So I mentioned how important it is to have aligned sleep, that our sleep schedules are in sync with our own internal clock because of not only the quality of the rest, but how it affects our mood. And we've talked about how our modern lives are disruptive to that alignment. And it makes sense then that there is a significant connection between our sleep and our overall mental health. Because it's not just about feeling a little tired or a little down. Ongoing sleep issues, whether it's not enough sleep, poorly timed sleep, fragmented sleep, interrupted sleep, Any of these things are linked to higher rates of anxiety, bipolar disorder, even PTSD. Our brains need the restorative period of sleep to process emotions, to help regulate our moods, to function effectively. And so as I'm thinking about these connections and my own physiological state, especially after prolonged periods of poor sleep, it's only appropriate that the idea of sleepwalking came to mind. Because think about someone who's sleepwalking, which I have done actually as a child. I was a sleepwalker, but I'm obviously now speaking in a more metaphorical sense. But if you think about somebody who's sleepwalking, they're physically moving through their environment, but they're not fully aware or fully engaged. They're disconnected from what's happening around them. And their actions seem almost automatic, without thought. And that's how depression can feel for some people. That's how these states of lowness can feel. Like we're going through the motions of the day, but not feeling really present. There's a sense of detachment, a difficulty in connecting with joy or sadness or any genuine feeling in a way that feels embodied. And just as a sleepwalker might stumble as they're moving through the world, these states can make it challenging to navigate daily life, make it challenging to make decisions, challenging to feel motivated or to have a sense of purpose. There can be a feeling of being trapped, like being caught in a dream, unable to fully wake up and engage with reality. Just like sleepwalking can be a symptom of underlying sleep problems, maybe the feeling of sleepwalking through life can sometimes be a signal that our sleep and our internal rhythms are out of sync. As if our internal thoughts and emotions are actually echoing the physiological needs that are not being met within our bodies. And so, maybe one of the most impactful things we can do for our mental well-being is to really prioritize sleep and rest and try to align ourselves with our natural circadian rhythms. And that might involve being more conscious of our exposure to light in the evenings, trying to get some natural light in the morning, going for a walk, aiming for a more consistent sleep schedule, even on our days off, as much as our life allows. And it seems so silly to keep hammering this idea, but when we consider things like daylight saving time, it might be worth continuing to have conversations and discussions about whether these abrupt shifts are really beneficial for our overall health and well-being, especially our mental health. I know in my own personal life, there are a few things that feel as immediately rewarding as waking up in the morning and enjoying the early morning light in what Eva and I like to call coffee dates, where we can sit on the porch or on the deck and just enjoy that particular quality of light that comes with the morning. And I encourage you to find ways to sit in the light and try to resync. Ultimately, of course, if you're feeling like you're constantly in this state of sleepwalking, please reach out for support. Talk to someone you trust, a friend, a family member, or a mental health professional. Just like we need to address underlying sleep issues, we need to approach mental health challenges with care and with the support that is necessary. And remember, we're all in this together. That's it for this episode of Rowing with the Homies. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you were able to gain something from this conversation about sleep and how it might be affecting us. If you have any comments or you want to share your thoughts, please do so. You can message me on social media, send an email to finlos@finloslives.com. You can like and subscribe to the podcast through any of your preferred podcasting apps or programs. I'd really appreciate it if you share the show or comment about the show with anyone who you think might enjoy it or benefit from it. But mostly, I'm just really thankful to have the chance to talk with you. And I look forward to our next conversation.